program with our supporters, IHAB and Divo Voda. We are very happy to start the lecture. Very interesting conversation with our two prominent speakers. This lecture is in frame of our Socratic seminars. What do we do? Like, how many of you heard about Aspen Institute? Maybe raise your hand. Oh, that's easy. Maybe somebody want to tell what we do?
Good things.
Good things. I like this answer. So actually, yes, we try our best to build a better society, a good society. That's a very philosophical term. We have leadership seminars, we have policy programs, we have public events. One is well known as Ideas Festival in Odessa with IPAC Hub Odessa. And we also we gather a big community of leaders from different areas, trying to give them opportunity to rethink their own values, to become better leaders for this good society which we all dream about. So we have the Socratic seminar last 2 days, which was focused on AI topic. We were discussing different side of AI, artificial intelligence. I don't know whether intelligence could be artificial, and we were discussing that about future of jobs, about future of human beings, about benefits, threats, what this technological revolution could bring us, and where should be the role of government regulation, where should be the role of personality, a human being as a core value. And I'm very happy that we have a chance to have this public lecture. We have a stream, so I also welcome. Unfortunately, we received so many registrations that we were not able to host all the interested participants here offline. So we have a stream online. I greet you all as well. And it's my pleasure to introduce you, and I invite you to welcome, firstly, our fantastic speaker, Wilson White. Let's applaud. And also prominent, my colleague from Aspen Institute in US, Executive Director of Aspen Institute Socrates program, our big partner, Cordell Carter, who will moderate the discussion. And I welcome you to take your seats here. Cordell will tell more about Wilson in his introduction. We structure our conversation today, so we have 40 minutes of conversation between these two prominent gentlemen. And after that, we'll have still time for your questions, for your insights. And believe that's a huge potential of very interesting insights. So enjoy your conversation. Thank you for coming. Follow Aspen Institute Kiev's events. We are very active in Facebook or website. And thank you for being with us. Cordell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a little more energy. The folks on live stream can't hear us. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Fantastic. I'm an American. I can't help it. Firstly, I just want to thank our colleagues at Aspen Institute Kiev for putting on this amazing event tonight, as well as this weekend seminar with Wilson. Everyone that was in the seminar, please raise your hand. So, those of you who didn't raise your hand, next time let it be you. Next time they advertise for a seminar, we bring amazing speakers from all over the world, to countries all over the world. We're about in 12 different countries, our program. They're amazing, values-driven, ethics-based, text-based, Socratic dialogue. Always interesting, you're gonna learn a lot from it. It is my absolute honor to sit here with my good pal, Wilson White of Google. Wilson leads public policy division of the Google. One of his issues is artificial intelligence. And that is how we connected, because I do a lot of seminars on artificial intelligence. And so, Wilson, I want you to tell them a little about yourself and what you do, and then we'll delve into some of the things we discussed this week.
Thank you, Cordell. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend time with us discussing this very, very important topic. And thank you, Aspen Institute Kiev, for giving me an opportunity to visit Ukraine. I am, as Cordell said, Wilson White. I'm a director on the Government Affairs and Public Policy team at Google at our headquarters in California, US. As part of my job, I have the great privilege and honor to work with governments and key opinion formers, NGOs, business owners, on topics that are at the intersection of technology and technology's implications for society. And today, one of the most prominent issues at that intersection is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how we, as a global society, will collectively decide how to both develop and deploy that technology. So I get to spend every day thinking about these issues, thinking about how they play out in every corner of the globe, and to really, I guess, get into the discussions on the hard questions that we're going to have to make as this technology evolves and as this technology becomes more and more intimate part of our lives.
Great, but before I start with the questions, I just want to recognize the brilliance of mixing coffee and Coca-Cola. I've never heard of such a thing. This is amazing. So thank you. Cheers, indeed. Thank you to whoever did this. Thank you, Coca-Cola. That's a shameless plug. I want to start with something that Yulia said today as well as at the seminar on Saturday. Can intelligence be artificial? And under that theme, what is AI and what is it not?
Well, AI is one of the easiest ways to get a click on your website or visitors to your page. Everyone is using the term artificial intelligence these days. It's actually a technology that's been around for decades. In fact, the first academic paper on AI was published in the mid-1950s. And so many of the concepts that are now coming to life in real-life applications have been concepts that academia has been wrestling with for a number of years. But it's exactly that, though. It's a technology. It's a tool. And one of the ways of achieving artificial intelligence is machine learning. It's one technique. You often hear those terms used interchangeably, but machine learning is actually one way of accomplishing this kind of broader concept of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is actually the technique that we at Google use a fair amount in the products that we put out. But when you ask the question about what it's not, AI is not replacing humans. AI is not designed to have like general cognitive abilities in the way that we as humans have. What it is really a tool that's fixated on solving very, very specific problems that involves pattern recognition that we as humans in our normal sensibilities aren't able to recognize these patterns at the scale that's required to really solve some of these problems. And machine learning, artificial intelligence gives us that tool to solve some of these complex problems.
So, if it lacks the cognitive ability of say, an adult, what age would you give AI if it were a human being?
That's a very good question. So I have 3 kids at home. I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 4-month-old, almost 5 months. 5 months and 2 days. I would say less than a 4-year-old.
Less than a 4-year-old. So it can run into walls, but it can run.
It can run. But any given single AI system. So my 4-year-old can read, she can sing, she can walk and run. She can hug me, she can show affection, she can show anger and a bunch of other emotions. There's not a single AI system that can do all of those things. Today we can design an AI system that can beat the world's champion at the old Chinese game of Go or chess. We can design an AI system that at Google we've used AI to reduce the energy consumption at our data centers. You can design an AI system that can detect certain diseases better than pathologists. But having a single AI system that can do these types of things across domains, we're not there yet. And so I would put AI as a very, 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 very early stage technology in terms of the application.
So is it fair to say that the way most of us think about AI is we're mostly thinking of the marketing and not necessarily the solution? Is that fair to say?
Maybe. I think a lot of people are on the kind of marketing bandwagon and using AI a lot. In my view, that also contributes to 2 things. It contributes to the hype around AI, but it also contributes to exacerbating like the dystopian views of AI, right? The worst is going to happen. And in our seminar this weekend, it's actually Luis who's sitting here on the front row here. As part of our discussion, we talked about like whether we should think about renaming AI, right? Yulia said in her opening remarks that like, can intelligence actually be artificial? And I think these are good questions to ask and think about, like, does the name artificial intelligence, does that imply things that actually drives us immediately to dystopian views about the technology and what it can accomplish and what it ultimately will be able to accomplish? And one of the suggestions that came up in our discussion, which I loved, and I think I'm going to steal it and use it from now on as I talk about this topic, is maybe we should think of it as collaborative intelligence. Because that's really what we're doing with machine learning. We're looking at how can this technology assist us in the things that we do as a society, right? How do we make pathologists better? How do we solve problems that we couldn't solve before better? How do we increase productivity and employment, right? So it's really in a collaboration with us and not artificial or supplanting us.
So I wonder if you could speak to some of the uses of AI type technologies that we may not be aware of, that we're already using, that's always among us, and then transition to some of those big problems that AI is helping us solve.
Good question. Can I see a show of hands of folks who have used an AI system before? So it's about 60% of the room. Actually, I think everyone in the room has used an AI system before, because I'm willing to venture that everyone in the room has a smartphone. Everyone in the room has probably done an internet search before. Hopefully you've done that with Google. But if not, I understand that there are other internet search engines out there.
You just don't know their name.
But if you've done that, like at Google, for an example, we've been leveraging AI technology for over a decade. And we use it in many of the products that you use every day. So for example, when you do a query on Google search, AI is running in the background to figure out how do we get you the best query contextually for what you're asking for. Over the billions of pages that exist on the web, we want to present to you the web pages that are the answer to your query, the one that's going to be most useful to you. And that type of problem, at solving a problem like that at scale, at the scale of Google, where we get billions of queries a day, only artificial intelligence and machine learning can actually do that in such an efficient way. If you're using Google Maps and it's telling you the time it may take you to get from your origin to your destination, artificial intelligence is in the background, leveraging all of those data points to help give that predictive measure to you in terms of your time. And so we're using AI technology in a host of everyday products. And so each of you is probably very accustomed to the benefits of AI that come from very cool products. But what we're learning is that AI is not just a good tool for productivity products or really cool things like a Photos app that can make a photo that you take in the dark show up in the light. It's also solving some of the world's greatest challenges. So for example, we did a research study not long ago, and now it's been published and we're working with clinicians on. There's a disease that's called diabetic retinopathy. It's a disease that's associated with diabetes, and it's the leading cause of blindness around the world. Now, this disease is, once detected, it's easily treatable. But the problem is, most victims of this disease, they don't go in to get diagnosed until the blindness has started. And oftentimes it's too late for the treatment to work. So what if we could actually detect this disease much earlier and get these patients the treatment before the blindness becomes too far down the road? And what we've discovered by applying AI to millions of pathology reports where we've identified this disease, machine learning systems can actually detect this very, very, very early. And what that will allow us to do is have this limited number of specialist pathologists who specialize in this to focus on the most urgent cases, right? We can actually free up patients who can't afford a pathologist to get detected early. So this is solving some of the world's most challenging problems. I mentioned the energy point. earlier, but I'll emphasize it here. At Google, the scale that we operate at, we have data centers around the world, and in order for us to be efficient at what we do, we have to have energy efficient data centers. We have to. And so we spend a lot of investment and a lot of time ensuring that those data centers are energy efficient. Well, what we did a few years ago was we applied a machine learning model to our energy efficiency operations in our data centers, and we were able to reduce our energy consumption by 40%. 40%. Now that number by itself is super impressive, right? But it's even more impressive when you take into account that even before applying machine learning, we were investing very heavily in reducing our energy. So we were already a very energy efficient operation. That's the type of like big problem that we as a society can solve once we start deploying machine learning and artificial intelligence in the right ways.
So that's exciting stuff, and I'm going to take a bridge here. You let me know if I take it too far. A bridge too far, and saying that perhaps part of the driver for the dystopian views on the future of AI is that we don't really have policy frameworks in place that could really regulate yet not stifle innovation. You work with more than 40 governments around the world. What are you hearing? What concerns you? What gives you hope in that regard? And what are your leaders in terms of AI and as a policy?
I actually don't think the policy world is the thing that's causing the dystopian views. I'm very optimistic about what's happening there. I really blame Hollywood for this. It's every movie that has an AI-like system or a machine-like system. It always ends with the machines killing us, right? It always ends bad for the humans. It never ends well for us. And so if you grow up with decades and decades of seeing that, and then you start reading your newspaper and it's artificial intelligence is here and artificial intelligence is there, you immediately go back to this dystopian Skynet, the world will end when this thing arrives mentality. So one of the things I'm thinking about back in Silicon Valley is we need to go down to Southern California and spend a lot of time with these writers who are making these big box office hits, and actually have some movies that actually show a different version of AI. The AI that's actually helping us save endangered species because we can identify where they are and we can actually get in front of them. An AI that's allowing us to cure diseases that are easily detectable by a machine that can see millions of cases that we've already identified and labeled, right? Let's have a movie that really lifts that version and that future of AI. And I think some of the dystopian views will go away. But because of this dystopian views, I think, and the lack of very clear rules and guidelines around this technology, it is exacerbated. And so you see governments around the world, I think the last count I had was over 36 countries around the world have AI as a national strategy around AI. They're thinking about what AI means for their citizens in their country. That both scares me and gives me hope. It gives me hope because this is an important technology. I mean, think about what we've discussed already. Like, this technology has the ability to solve some really big challenges. We should be talking about it collectively, and government is a proxy for that collective conversation around that. So I'm very hopeful about the fact that it has reached a level of prominence and priority in such a widespread way. Now, what scares me about it is the pace of policy making versus the pace of technological advances are almost asymmetrical. Technology is advancing at a very fast rate, and policy is very often well behind the advancements of technologies. Some of that's just the structure of policymaking. Some of it is, it's really hard to make good policy before we know what the technology does and where the risks are and where regulation or laws actually need to be made. And so, as I mentioned, I think AI is very young. I think it's a very young toddler. And this idea of regulating AI, just for the sake of regulating AI, without having specific problems that we've identified, runs the risk of stopping that toddler from becoming a young adult and from becoming an adult. and from contributing to society in ways that we would expect from someone who's had a lived experience in that way. So that's what gives me a bit of pause. That's not to suggest that regulation as a whole is not needed or it's not smart, but the approach to that regulation should be focused on identifiable problems where regulation is uniquely suited to help solve. And I think that's the conversation I hope governments around the world are having around this technology, and not giving in to a knee-jerk reaction to fear about what this technology may ultimately mean for us.
Now, I know that there are less than 10 companies around the world that are doing the lion's share of AI advances, which means they kind of run the show. So all the benefits you can think of AI, it's possible that it could be owned by a handful of people. What are companies like Google doing to think about their contribution to the greater good in this regard, knowing that they are controlling so much of this emerging technology?
Very good question. In one of the readings for our seminar this weekend, one of the authors noted that essentially all of the world's AI talent and resources are concentrated in about 7 private companies. And those private companies are US companies and Chinese companies. And US and China are only 2 countries in a world of 200 countries, right? And so this is an issue that we need to think about and wrestle with, right? Because the benefits that we're talking about AI, those are benefits that should be shared as wide as possible. Those benefits should be realized by a global citizen, right? Not just citizens in these 2 countries, or at the whims of the leaders of these very small set of private companies, right? At Google, our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, right? And in order for us to live out that mission, we have to think beyond just the countries in which we operate. We have to think, how does our technology get into the hands of as many people as possible for their collective benefit? So one of the things that we're doing in the AI space is consistent with our ethos is to open source our technology. So I don't know whether folks in the audience have heard of TensorFlow, but it's essentially a set of open source APIs where developers and lay people around the world can actually get access to AI technology. You can go and build solutions that are AI fueled by using free and open source libraries that Google has created. By democratizing that technology, I think we're addressing the issue that you're rightly raising around the concentration of AI power and influence.
And what about the ethical obligations you have? Because you all know so much more than your regulators. It's almost unfair. So, I mean, what is your obligation to the greater good as a platform owner that has just a much more power than everyone else?
Regulators have a lot of power, so it's almost unfair. I think it could go the other way there. But no, your point is well taken there, which is it's if you have that superior knowledge about the technology, what it can do, but also the risks that come with it. What obligations do you have to make sure you're ensuring others understand that as well? I do think the private sector has a huge responsibility here, not just because the knowledge and talent is concentrated in the private sector, but also because what we do with this technology has real implications for people. It touches people in a real way. And in the same way that when governments pass laws, it touches people in a real way. And so we do have a measure of responsibility there. One of the things that we at Google and other companies have done this as well, but last year we published our ethical charter around AI, our AI principles. And in that charter, we lay out 7 principles, things that we will hold ourselves to when it comes to the development and deployment of AI technology. But we went a bit further than that, and this was the subject of great debate internally. Rather than just laying out the things that we would be for when it comes to AI, we also put a few red lines in place. These are things that we will not pursue. And you can imagine, as a private company dealing with a technology that's still very young, that's a huge step to publicly constrain yourself in that way. But we think that this technology warrants that type of major step. And so some of the things that we put as red lines is we won't build technology that contravenes international norms around human rights, or technology that's used for things like mass surveillance, or technology that's used for weaponry. And those red lines actually raise questions in and of themselves. And these are questions that we will continue to ask ourselves and debate. And to me, that's actually what having an ethical charter is all about. That kind of constant dialogue about not can we do something, but should we do it?
Speaking of should, and before we transition to some of the topics that brought up in the seminar, I know that we have some former and current parliamentarians in the room. So what would be your advice to them as they think about their role as quote-unquote regulators and preparing this young republic for a future that AI will play a big part in?
Two things. I think one is in one of our readings this weekend, there was a passage that I'm going to paraphrase here that essentially said we shouldn't just be focused on how do we make machines smarter, but also how do we ourselves get smarter about machines. And I think, like, as I go around the world and I deal with policymakers and regulators and those who influence them in every corner of the earth, and one of the things that saddens me the most is the lack of technical knowledge around technology. These are people who are passing laws that regulate technology without a deep, or at least a sufficient level of understanding of the technology itself. And so one of the things that I will encourage is get smart on the technology. Really take a grounded, scientific approach to the technology that's sober, that's not a knee-jerk reaction to dystopian views or things that's designed to get clicks, like the sensational headlines, but really have a grounded conversation around the technology. I think we have, in the private sector, have a responsibility in that regard to make sure that we are putting that type of educational materials out there and helping our policymakers in that regard. And the second is an area that came up in our discussion this weekend as well, and that's around, Yuri, I think this is a comment you made during our session, which is machines are going to do what we allow them to do, right? And there's all of these potential societal risks that come with integrating machines into our lives. Policymakers are at the forefront of ensuring that they're putting appropriate guardrails in place around those risks. But a lot of that is reflective of society, right? And if we want to improve how artificial intelligence impacts us, the first thing is really to improve mankind itself, improve how we are behaving with each other. And if we're less biased, maybe our AI systems will be less biased. If we're less apt to go to war, maybe our AI systems will be better in that context. If we are more thoughtful about our employees and the labor force and things like social safety nets, then maybe AI won't be as disastrous when it comes to integrating it in the workforce. And I love that discussion we had around that, because that's also policymakers' job, is to help shape the rules of the road when it comes to society. How do we make society better? And so that I would encourage policymakers to think about that too. Rather than regulating the tech, let's regulate the people.
Be the change you want to be. Great. So I want to get to this. We had several nuggets of rich discussion during the seminar. I'm thinking especially of Nicola and Luis. They were talking about labor. Who was talking about children? There was someone talking about having a lot of children. That was funny.
Italian.
Was it Luis talking about children? But we talked about labor and the potential for AI to, firstly, it's very adept at repeatable tasks, like menial repeatable tasks that can replace humans. What then happens to those people that are displaced by their work leaving?
If there's first of all, jobs are made of several tasks, right? And so if artificial intelligence is good at a very specific task, that doesn't mean that it's going to take the whole job away, right? They may automate that specific task, but it may not take away the whole job. Now, where this becomes a potential issue is if you have a job where the collection of tasks that make up that job are largely or exclusively repetitive, non-cognitive type tasks. Those are easily susceptible to having machines do those. And so the question is, when those jobs go away, what do those people do when it comes to work? And that's why some of the conversations we had this weekend around lifelong learning and digital skilling, making sure that people are constantly prepared for the new jobs that will be created. And that's one of the things I think as a global society, we should be thinking about that. Jobs have always evolved and changed. In fact, when my dad was my age, the idea of a social media manager was not a thing. It was not even a thing. And now there are tens of thousands of jobs with that title, a social media manager. So over time, we think of new things to have work around and to have this concept of a job. And so we have to make sure that our people who may be in jobs that are being replaced by automation, that they're constantly getting the skills to have them prepared for those new jobs that we inevitably will create.
Now, on top of this creative destruction conversation, there were some folks that did take a dystopian view and started saying, listen, there'll be some people that just can't learn anymore. They either don't want to, they lack the cognitive abilities, or they're too senior in their roles that it just doesn't make sense to transition. What then? Is it universal basic wage? Can the savings from AI and labor pay for that wage? Have you come across this topic outside of seminar? Just wondering.
Absolutely. I think as governments are wrestling with AI, this point around the impact on the labor force is one of the top agenda items around the world. But it's not uniform. If you look at an economy like Japan, and we had Ken here from Japan, Japan has a rapidly decreasing population growth. And so in order to keep up with productivity, we need automation in the workforce so that we can continue to have people with rising wages and a rising standard of living. So bring the machines. But in other economies, the automation can actually put large swaths of the population out of work. And so governments are thinking of a slower and more surgical approach to how automation may be deployed, specific sectors. And so governments are thinking about this. But there's going to be people on the margins, right? Like the senior who is not going to be in a place to like learn new skills and take on a new job that's created. And I think it's incumbent upon societies to ensure that those people are well taken care of, to have a social safety net. And so this conversation around universal basic income or a living wage, these things are being discussed in earnest in places around the world. I tend to agree that that's a responsibility that we have to society. And one of the ways of doing that is using the extra gains that we get from the increased productivity that AI is likely to bring in the workforce, and then have hard conversations around how do we redistribute that gain in a way that protects our society as a whole.
So there was another topic that came up, and that was warfare, using or perhaps the idea of replacing human beings with machines, literally Terminator. And I just wonder if you could kind of speak to some of your reflection from that part of the discussion this past weekend.
It was actually one of the more somber parts of our discussion, because it's in these other like civilian areas that we're discussing, right? The workforce or things like bias and discrimination. We're readily prepared to put limitations on the technology. But as governments are thinking about AI as a tool for their national security and their national defense, this idea of putting limits is not as, people aren't as eager to put limits there. And that raises questions. It's questions that we should rightfully debate and discuss. And as a global society, we should be actively engaged in that discussion. But one of the things that we discussed this weekend is what a world would look like if you had AI powering automated weapons. and the incentives that an AI would have in an environment like that, and the realities of war, right? The decisions that are made in the context of the battlefield is very different from the decisions we may make here with the comfort of not being at war. And the realities of warfare, we think, it's a very, 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 very scary thought. But it's one in which we have agency. We have the ability today, as a global society, to have the conversation around autonomous weapons, the rules of engagement when it comes to automated warfare. We have the ability and the agency to say no to any of this, right? But it's only if we're having that conversation, and in my view, it's only if we're having that conversation in a multinational, like an international context. Each country thinking about their own national defense and being in a position to win a war may not get us the right result.
Before we transition to questions, one of the traditions of Socrates is that we go around and give everyone a closing statement. So imagine a big round table and everyone has 2 minutes to say their piece about the end of that seminar. So since I took you down this dark path of warfare, I was hoping you could bring us all up to some lighter place, not so dark where I took you. A closing statement before we transition to questions.
And do I have 2 minutes, or I can
go
as long
you're
as
the
I
man.
want?
You go as long as you want.
Thank you. Okay, we gave folks 2 minutes today to do their closing statements, and it was brutal. It was brutal. Because this topic lends itself to so many dimensions that it's hard to kind of surmise your views on this in such a short period of time. But I will try. Look, we're in the middle of a tectonic shift when it comes to the integration of technology in society. We really are. Some people call it the second machine age, or the fourth industrial revolution, or the age of artificial intelligence. But whatever you call it, there's no doubt that the recent advancements that we've seen in computing power, in artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, those advancements are ushering in a new wave of innovation that's never been seen before. But that wave of innovation is also introducing new questions and new challenges that we as a society, we have to get on top of. This technology is moving, the applications of this technology is moving very, very, very quickly. And so our ability to respond and make good decisions about how it's developed and deployed is an urgent concern. But I think if we do that, if we actually take the responsibility that we have as a global community and learn about the technology and shape it in a way that actually benefits, it actually extracts the most of the benefits while putting in the right safeguards to mitigate the downsides, I think that we're gonna see innovation that will outpace innovation that we've seen from the advent of the internet, or going way back to like the steam engine or the combustible engine. This type of technology, and when you start adding other emerging tech like quantum computing in this, we have an opportunity to solve some of the problems that humanity has been wrestling with since the beginning of humanity. And to me, that's exciting to me. And my counter to this idea of like a dystopian view of our future, is that we have complete agency in all of this. And I like to tell people I'm a technology optimist, but it's not because I'm naive or optimistic about the technology. It's because I'm optimistic about us as humans. We will continue to leverage this technology to make us more open, to connect us more, to make us more tolerant, to make us more just, to help us save more lives, to help us solve more problems. That's been the course of our history as human beings. I see no reason that course will change because of this new technological, the introduction of this new technology into our lives. And that's why, at the end of the day, I remain an optimist.
Fantastic. And I feel much better. How about you all? Feel better? Give both my hand. Questions, please. Right here in the middle. Please stand and say your name, please.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I'm a founder and chief technical officer at one of the AI companies here working on virtual psychologist application. My question to you is, regarding your several stance on our collective effort as a global society. Do you think that global society actually exists, and do you think one size will fit all? And what's your view as a company or maybe your personal? How can we craft solutions or hyper-personalize the solutions for every individual or every ethnical group of people who have probably their own culture and their own ethics? Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a good question. I think it's the short answer is all of the above. I do think there's some questions that this technology introduced that requires a global approach to this, right? If we're thinking about warfare, that doesn't lend itself to a country-specific solution. It needs to be on the level of some of the non-nuclear proliferation treaties that the world really engaged in post-World War II. So in that type of problem, it needs to be an international thing. When you think of questions around employment, for example, I do think this idea of basic income globally, with a local flavor to it, right, is a global conversation that we should have. But when it comes to like how we deploy the technology, we do need to have a more surgical view of it. We read an article that like profiled this former manufacturing town in the U.S. And when automation came in, all of the jobs from the manufacturing plant went away. But unfortunately, that community was made up of almost all manufacturing jobs. So on a very localized view of this, that automation killed that town. Where if you were to zoom up and say automation in the manufacturing field, you may say this is actually a good thing. This actually increases productivity in manufacturing. But what it did to that very specific town was devastating. And so as we think of that type of problem, where we deploy AI and automation in the workforce, we should be more surgical. We should look at that specific area, that specific sector maybe. So I do think we need to take like a very a hard look at the problem that we're trying to solve with AI, and what's the best way of solving that problem, both from a personal or local or regional or international standpoint.
Our mic person is closing the door. Question here.
Hello, my name is Vlad. Thanks a lot for your thoughts and like this topic. So my question is that maybe you know last year there was an amazing book published by Kai-Fu Lee. He was the head of Google in China. It's called the E-Superpower Comparison, Silicon Valley, China, like and what's happening there, yeah. And with the help of very loyal governance regulation in China, they're collecting a huge amount of data set, and from the machine learning perspective, it's clear that to have a solution of extremely challenges, you don't need like a brilliant guys, you just need a data set. So from your perspective, if I take a look from a level point of view on the world society, things that are happening, this like balance and fact that China is running ahead, how do you feel how we will behave maybe in the next years, like maybe thoughts about it?
Good question. There's a lot of conversation in our discussion this weekend about data and how data fuels training models and like AI systems. And I think it's a very, very important part of the equation. But I do think the technology has evolved and is evolving. And so early conversations around this basically settled with where your premise is, which is the more data you have, the better your AI system is going to be, right? What I challenge with that is I think as we're getting better with AI systems, we're learning how to do more with less. Because AI is actually designed to solve very specific problems, it's not really the amount of data you have, it's the quality of the data that you have, right? And so if you want an AI system that is trying to detect a particular type of cancer, having just general medical records from 1 billion people is not as helpful as having 10,000 pathology reports that have been labeled with that very specific cancer. And so the amount of data is not necessarily determinative on how good the AI system will be. And so there's a lot of research and a lot of thinking being done about how do we make sure that we can get the most out of an AI system with the least amount of data. Now, in your point about the larger like geopolitics around China running ahead and other places are not, I think this really goes to the point that Cordell, you raised around like the ethics of AI, right? One of the things that we at Google said in our AI principles was that as we are using data to train our AI models, we'll do it in a way that respect users' privacy. This really is that question of, can you just get as much data as possible and make systems better? Yes. Should you? No. What you should do is make sure you're getting proper consent from users to use their data. That even after that consent, you're using their data in a privacy-sensitive way. You're giving users the ability to opt out of you using their data. And so these are the principles that are guiding us. I don't like to get into this other company or this other nation is running ahead, because it's not about just getting the best AI. It's about getting the best AI in the best way, right? And that really is at the heart of this question of the responsible development and deployment of AI. We can develop it and deploy it, but we must do it responsibly, and in some ways that may constrain us.
I have a skip line here because a colleague at the seminar, Mikola, introduced a term I'd never heard before, robo-socialism. Do you recall saying this?
No.
Who said it?
Battaglia.
Battaglia, is he here? Can anyone speak to robo-socialism, what he said? Does anyone remember?
He started with robo-communism.
Robo-communism. Can you speak to it?
No.
No?
Then it evolved to robo-socialism. Yeah.
Just an example of some of the conversations we have. He's not here, so I don't want to call him out. Next question, I'm sorry. Here in the front.
My name is Andrei Magas. Well, I have a number of questions, but well, let's start from the first one.
How about one at a time?
Mr. White, you estimated that artificial intelligence is 4 years old, and you used the criteria like being able to hug, to feel emotions, etc. Is it possible that artificial intelligence just uses well, other criteria like calculation power?
Yeah, I think that's right. When in terms of solving mathematical equations or being able to detect patterns that are undetectable by the human eye or undetectable by the human ear, yes, I think there are AI systems that exist today that are much better at humans in those very specific areas. The point I was making there is that system that is very, very good at image detection, that system probably can't compose a new song or read literature, right? It's really, really good at image detection, but it's horrible at everything else. And so we're far away from having what people call artificial general intelligence. It's this idea of having cognitive abilities across domains. And that's the point I was making there in terms of it being a 4-year-old, right? Like it can be, it's better than humans in a lot of areas, but those very specific areas only.
May I the second one?
Well, one sec. Is there another question before you get to the second one in? Yes.
I have one.
We'll come back to you, I promise.
You will continue later. Mr. White here. So my name is Uliana. I'm a co-founder in UK-based company. So we run a fintech. But my question would be rather like very much focused on the social challenges, right? So what are your 5 top or 3 top challenges in society which you see can and should be addressed by AI?
Fascinating question. And I think this type of question is what we as a society should be asking ourselves, because this gets us outside of the robots are going to come kill us, right? This actually allows us to have a sober conversation about what AI can do, right? Because it can solve big problems. I think problems on the scale of climate change, for example. We have been, as a global community, have been wrestling with this. We know it's a problem. We don't really have a solution. We have things that we think will help slow this problem, but we don't have a solution. This is a very, very hard problem for us. at the root of that problem is really pattern recognition, understanding how certain emissions or its impact on the ozone layer, et cetera, and then the attendant impact of that on the temperature and geopolitical issues, et cetera. That is the type of like pattern recognition and looking at things at scale. That's exactly the type of problem that AI can be really good at. So to me, I think that's the type of human problem that we should be thinking about. Another area is generally is the area of health. Being able to detect diseases early. If there's a disease that we've detected 1 million times, we can train an AI system to detect that because it's very good at image detection. It's very good at voice recognition and those types of things. So let's leverage that very, very good skill set to do things like being able to detect things earlier so that healthcare can be distributed to people in rural parts of the world that don't have access to the most experienced doctors, et cetera. So healthcare is another area that I would say. And then I think the third one is this idea of productivity. We have vast inequalities in the world, right? I think that most of the world's wealth is concentrated in like 2% of the world's population or even smaller. And AI can actually add more productivity to the economy, get people back to spending time with their family and more leisure time, more creative. But the problem for us then is a human problem, which is how do we redistribute that wealth? In terms of wealth creation and productivity, AI can help us with that. But then what we do with that wealth and how we make sure that those who are most vulnerable among us are protected, that's a human problem. And we should leverage AI to actually give us that problem to solve.
Yes, question in the back here.
My name is Dmitry, I'm an economist. So, do you consider this AI technology is a new step or a new age of our technological revolution? And you have told us a lot about pluses about this, but each technology has pros and cons. What do you think the main, not problems, minuses, or weaknesses or threats of this technology in the next 10 years? Thank you.
Like the shortcomings of the technology, like where it comes up short. I think some of the questions around like data and how do we make algorithms smarter is one area. There's a big research area around that. In our discussions this weekend, we talked about this issue of bias and discrimination, right? If you put biased data in, you're likely to get biased results out. That biased data is reflective of like societal bias, right? So one of the things that I think is an open question, there's a lot of work being done in this space, is how do you actually leverage the power of AI to de-bias not only the data, de-bias our training models, and de-bias some of the outcomes that come from this. So that's one of the open questions and shortcomings that I think more work is needed there. But then the third area I would say is not really a technical issue, it's really on us. And that is understanding that this technology is very new, and we're already seeing enormous benefits from a very, very, very nascent technology. Let's make sure that we learn as much as we can learn on the possibilities of this technology. Let's make sure we're making the right investments in this technology while being very aware of and mindful of the downsides. When appropriate, putting the right guardrails in place when appropriate, but with a constant view towards extracting the most we can from the benefits of this technology.
All right, time for 2 more questions. Oh, maybe a few more. She said more. Okay, great. Right here, to your, ma'am, to your, okay. Never mind. We'll go back. It's okay. I saw hands. I'm sorry. Here we are.
Just
raise your
hand.
In the middle.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm Hiroshi Shibata. I'm a Kiev-based Japanese IT consultant. I'm also leading local AI R&D center for Japanese clients. And you know, as you mentioned during your discussion, you know, we do have a decreasing population. We're facing, you know, big issue of decreasing workforce, and the government is trying to leverage AI to supplement this decreasing population. But I see the shortcomings of that outcome. Is one of the things is that decreasing tax paid by the big corporation. Japanese government is trying to make a regulation put on platformers, so-called including Google, Amazon, and Facebook, etc. What do you think of this government putting more regulations on over those platformers to increase the tax revenue instead of collecting taxes from individual laborers? Thank you.
Very good question. Tough question, man. Google's gonna have to raise my salary after this session. A lot of work for Google. I have a few opinions about this. I do think it's well within a government's purview to think about the best way to raise revenue so that they can take care of the needs of its citizens. I think when it comes to issues of corporate tax, what we're seeing is nation states taking their own go at taxes, rather than an international approach to tax. That worries me because if you have like a multinational company like the company I work for, your presence is in multiple countries. If each country that you provide a service in decides that they're now going to tax you by X amount based off of your global revenue, one of two things are going to happen. Either that company is going to stop doing business in your country, and so your citizens will no longer benefit from those services, or that company is going to stop doing business in your country, and your citizens won't benefit from those services. It's just not. It's not the way of thinking about a global community, particularly in the internet age. And so these conversations around international tax need to be happening in an international body, like the OECD or a similar type forum. Now, that doesn't prejudice the fact that like Japan should get more tax money or country Y should get more tax money. But the conversation should not be happening at the national level. It should be happening at an international level. So there's a multinational agreement on how that is structured. The second thing I'll say about that in terms of regulating the platforms, and I really, this is probably Google's corporate view, but it's my personal view as well, which is it's very, very, very short-term thinking. Governments around the world are spending years thinking about a regulation for essentially the top 4 or 5 largely US-based companies, right? Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft to a lesser extent. And these laws that will eventually be passed, let's say in the next 2 or 3 years, will become laws for eternity. And there's no guarantee that Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft will be the leaders in how technology is being integrated into those citizens' lives 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now. So it's taking a very narrow view of solving the problem. It's looking at like who are the big people today, as opposed to looking behind that and think about what are the issues of today. And that's kind of, when I'm talking to government officials around the world, that's the direction of travel that I try to push them in. Don't have a Google tax or an Amazon tax. Think about how do we leverage this increased productivity? How do we make sure that our citizens are having jobs and that these companies are making investments here so that our citizens make more money and then we can have income tax for our citizens, as an example. But I do think this very narrow view of regulate what is right in front of us today and not think about what the world will look like 5 years from now when that regulation finally passes, is the way that governments and the private sector should be interacting on solving problems.
Here I go taking a bridge too far again. I just wonder if our major technology platforms would be supportive of an international body like the OECD saying, okay, listen, we're going to get all the top 67 countries not to tax you, but we're going to tax you. I want you to contribute 3% of revenue to a futures fund that focuses on computer science education for citizens all over the world, children all over the world. Is that something you think large companies like Google would be supportive of?
Yeah, I think that any conversation that happens in an international context like that, the devil will be in the details, but I think if that conversation is happening in an international way and that becomes the decision that the world's economies come up with, you'll see companies like Google and every other company comply with those laws. It's not a we don't want to pay tax conversation. It's more like what's the right way of having that conversation. But on your question about like digital skilling and paying for kids to be educated, I don't even think that should be part of the tax. I think the tax conversation should be we should pay taxes so that governments can provide services to their citizens. But this responsibility of making sure the next generation has sufficient digital literacy, I think that's individually the responsibility of companies like the company I work for. And that's why we invest very, very heavily in digital skills education and ensuring that kids, even at the youngest ages, are becoming digitally literate.
Great. I saw some more hands. We have about 15 more minutes, so ask away. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Ruslan. I'm lawyer, ex-Ukrainian MP. And so my question is, if you have the understanding that must exist some rules in the whole world, present international law is a soft law, and if we are talking about Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and other companies with enough responsibility, social responsibility, we cannot be sure that in another country the situation can be other. And if we have this understanding, maybe we have to go from the international soft law to the hard law. But if we come to the hard law, the countries must give some of independence to the new organization. Because when we're talking about United Nations, we can clearly see that this organization cannot solve all the whole world problems. And if we go to the AI time period, with which rules we have to live in this world, new world, with which of international rules we have to bring with our understanding of possibilities of international intelligence, artificial intelligence. Thank you.
I think that's the question for a global community to decide which areas make sense for international laws versus hard laws. In our discussion this weekend, someone used this analogy which really resonated with me around air flight rules, right? Imagine a world in which the United States of America had one rules for flying and landing planes. Ukraine had a different set of rules. The UK had a different set of rules. We would be destroyed, right? But the idea was we want people to be connected. We want Americans to be able to travel to the UK and Brits to be able to travel to Ukraine. And so in order to facilitate that, we have to have like an internationally recognized set of rules, right? And I think that analogy it really resonated with me because I think AI is the type of technology that lends itself to a similar analogy. There's certain things that we as a global community want to have. We want to be more connected. We want our climate to be better. We want our air to be safer for our kids. We want our elderly to be able to be taken care of. And AI can solve all of those problems. Now, there are other problems that AI may be able to solve that lends itself to very specific kind of national strategies, right? And so it's not a one-size-fit-all. Let's just regulate AI from a broad horizontal way. is actually looking at these very specific applications of AI and thinking about which of those make sense for us to solve from a national standpoint or even a local standpoint, and which of those make sense for us to force that conversation in an international context.
Next question. Yes, Mikola, front.
Mikola, my question is, a couple of years ago I was on the presentation from the Singularity University, and it was predicted by Peter Diamandis, maybe you know him, that in 20 years computers will be as powerful as human brains, and in a couple of years it will be more powerful than from the time. In a couple of years it will be more powerful than the whole human all over the world. My question is, do you believe in these predictions, and what will we do?
20 years?
Something like 20 years. It was 5 years ago, it was 20, so now it is 15.
So yeah, a couple of things there. Like even that question, embedded in that question is a very dystopian view of what technology will be, right? It's 20 years from now, the machines will be more powerful than us, right? It's this man versus machine like premise, which I reject, right? And so whenever we have these conversations, I try to pull the conversation out of this them versus us context, right? Because it basically strips away all of our agency. In one of the readings that we had for our seminar, one of the authors made the point of like, we think humans are so brilliant that we will build machines that can solve things like climate change, and yet so stupid that we will let these machines become more powerful than us and overtake us. Like that's a cognitive dissonance that I think like we should highlight and say, I just don't know whether that's the case. Now, will machines have the ability to do very specific things that historically we've relegated to like just human intelligence, like some of the mathematical stuff that was mentioned earlier, or like the image detection stuff, or things like playing a very, very complicated strategy game like Go? Yes, we're already doing that. I think we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to be better than humans in a lot of like very specific applications, particularly those things that lend themselves to repetitive, non-cognitive tasks. Absolutely. Now, will machines then decide, hey, I can do this thing way better than humans, let me go overpower them? I just don't think that's part of the calculus in how people are thinking about building and deploying AI. So the time frame for that, in my mind, where machines are more powerful than us, I put it on the other side of never.
Great. We have about 5 more minutes, so I see 2 hands right there. You all have the last 2 questions. So please budget your time.
Okay, thank you. When comparing human power and power of artificial intelligence, well, we can objectively say about calculation possibility. And we all agree that AI is billion times faster than humans. The example with a chess game, first people made a program which defeated human. Then there was another program which learned all the games, and then they had a computer competition, and one program won. And then people made artificial intelligence, which was given only rules, no sample games, and it learned by itself. In 8 hours, it was so powerful that it beat this best computer game, computer program, straight. So it shows that in 8 hours, this was so powerful. So let us think what happens after several months. This program, this artificial intelligence, thinks and develops well about all the facts. Is it possible that we humans just cannot understand how good it became? I would make an example. Let's compare monkeys and humans. What do monkeys think about humans? Well, they understand only those things they understand. All the rest actions, monkeys of humans, monkeys consider as, well, stupid and having no sense. If monkey wants a banana, it makes a trick and gets a banana. Monkey thinks that it uses humans, but in fact it's different. So,
Who knows?
what is the percentage? Yeah.
Thank you for that light question.
Is there an opportunity that artificial intelligence is already better than humans and manipulates us? And what is the percentage in your view?
Again, I'm going to reject the dystopian premise of the question, but I think like what you're trying to ask is, are there unknown unknowns? Are there things that we just don't know about this technology? I think that's true. One of the areas that we talked about this weekend was this area of explainability, right? And a lot of what's happening with the underlying technology, neural networks, this series of mathematical equations that are making adjustments at alarming kind of rates. We aren't able to explain exactly why an AI system made a decision it made, and we aren't able to predict what that outcome would be before it happens. Right? It's in a lot of ways it's a black box. There's a huge research area that exists today on trying to figure out how do we actually crack that black box and be able to explain what's happening there. Early days, but my best guess is that we're gonna crack that, right? But yes, there's some unknowns. But in that example of the chess game or the Go game, I think it was chess that you're thinking about, where the AI beat the computer program. That AI had a very specific goal: win the chess game. It learned it in seven hours. Yes, right. It could probably learn and beat a computer eventually in 10 hours, or in 10 minutes, or 30 seconds, right? But the outcome will still be winning that chess game. That AI system that beat the chess game is not going to get up, walk, talk, sing, compose music. It's designed to do one thing: win at chess. And that's that grounding that conversation in that way, and not like getting pulled into this because it's really, really, really good at this one thing. Like, it can really be good at a whole bunch of other things. The technology just doesn't support that today. There are people who are thinking about this area of AGI, like general intelligence, and that's far off. But if we're ever in that world, then some of the things that you're laying out, I think, becomes more of a reality. But we're nowhere near that from a technical standpoint today.
And the last question, the woman in white here.
Hi, my name is Kenya. My question is, maybe you can imagine a job of the future which is protected from being replaced by artificial intelligence. I mean, it's kind of a mental health issue. Even if you strong and young enough to organize your life and find another job, yeah, but nothing can guarantee you that your new place will be replaced, and it seems like it leads to the social class of unuseless people. So maybe you can imagine such kind of job opportunity.
Yeah, we read a fascinating piece as part of our discussion that really envisioned a world without work, and it was fascinating just to think about, like, what would we be able to do if we had much more free time and leisure time, and I just think that jobs, that work means more than just money, right? Because there's people who make, like the founders of the company I work for, they make billions of dollars. They're worth billions of dollars, and they still come to work every day. So it's not about being paid. Work has to mean something more than that, right? And so for different people, work has different meanings. And because of that, I think there will always be a human incentive for work. So I'll give you one job that I think will never go away, at least for me. I love whiskey. Anyone who spent time with me over the past couple of days, they know that. And one of the things I love about whiskey is I travel around the world and I'm having trying new whiskeys. I love to have someone engage in a conversation with me about the whiskey. I'll pay whatever to be able to have that conversation and to learn about the character of the whiskey, its history, the distillery, the family. And even if AI comes in and can create the best distillery of whiskey, someone will always be able to have a job, even if it's just one customer. If they can spend time with me and explain the character of the whiskey and why it's such a special thing. Those types of jobs that are like uniquely human, they're not going to go away. That's AI is not going to become that. Like as humans, we like being connected to other humans, and we will always find ways to make sure that connection endures. So it's not something that I think you should lose sleep about, at least in our lifetime.
Ladies and gentlemen, 70 years ago, the founders of the Aspen Institute made the aspen leaf the symbol. Now, there's something special about the aspen tree from which the leaf falls. If you see aspens in the wild, you will see thousands of them on the side of a mountain. You're like, that's a lot of trees. No, they share a common root system. That's one organism. We look different, we talk different, we're from different places, but we share our common humanity. That's what connects us. How many times did we hear tonight? Humanity, humans. We are in charge of the future of AI. Join me in thanking Mr. Wilson White for his brilliance. And after Dennis is next.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this really vivid and I hope inspiring lecture or discussion or conversation. So, and also I would like on behalf of the Aspen Institute to thank you all for coming here. And basically this is the end of our event. And I just would like to warn those participants of the Socrates seminar who want to join our kind of small farewell, whatever, dinner or snack, just to stay somewhere around, somewhere